The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our Exago support lab of the first of this month. So this is the end user one for February. Good morning, anybody, of course. And if you guys could just start by typing a Y or a yes, standard operating procedure here, just so I know you can hear me and see my screen alike. Awesome. Okay, great. Getting some answers here. Awesome. So welcome everybody once again. Today we're going to be talking about mapping, both the legacy Geo Chart functionality as well as the Google Maps functionality that was introduced in version 2016.3. So if you're on a version prior to 16.3, the first part of the lab is going to be really geared towards you. If you're on a version 16.3 or later, so including 16.3 there, then both are going to be available to you provided your administrator has given you access to them, right? So both halves of the lab today will be relevant to you. So what am I going to accomplish using a mapping functionality? Really the idea is that maps are going to give you a visual representation of data that can be represented geographically. So we're going to be able to really see based on an area of the world or of the country, we can do different levels here based on a couple different things, and we'll get into all of this, of course. But based on a certain level, we can show aggregated metrics. So maps can be really useful, especially in that second bullet point is, when might I use a map? When I'm looking to show X, Y, and Z. So pretty straightforward use case there. Maps are going to be fully interactive on output, so they're a really cool visualization to expose to your end users if you guys are building this up for them. Pretty easy to set up, as I'm going to show you today, so your users would likely be able to do this as well. But then on the output, so whether you're putting these on a dashboard or running them as an individual report, there's quite a bit of interactivity available there, and we'll walk through that, of course, as well. The last really cool thing here is that I can aggregate more than one metric per location, and then of course at various and also multiple levels. So maybe I start at the country level, I go down, and I'm speaking about the United States here, so maybe I go from country to state to city, etc. I can go based on latitude, longitude, if that's data that I have available to me. So lots of different options here. Overview of the lab, we're definitely going to touch on the difference between GeoCharts and Google Maps so that if you do have both exposed to you, you can make a decision there with a fully informed on what both look like, what they can do, the options we have, and the setup process. So really the lab is going to be a pretty straightforward one. In terms of most of the ones we've done, this is really a how-to. We're gonna walk you through how to set up both of them, advantages of each, and how we might interact with them as well. This one should be fairly quick. We won't eat up too much of your Wednesday today, but thanks for hanging out with us. Okay, great. So let's hop to Exago. I'm gonna speak about them a little bit, and then we'll really dive in here. So what is the difference? Obviously, both are giving us a visual representation of geographical data. Apologies. GeoCharts, as I said, are the legacy option here, and that's what we have on screen right now. Google Maps are also allowing you to insert interactive mapping here. They may be a bit more useful than GeoCharts simply in that they allow you to go into more levels. So GeoCharts are going to have a set amount of levels, and those levels themselves will be specified, right? So I can't change country to state if I'd like to go to a different level there. I'm going to have 3 options that I'll fill in there. Maybe they look a little bit newer. If we look at the Google Maps output here, it's going to be a different display. Let me just refresh this. I ran this morning. Great. So it's going to be a different display. This is going to be a little bit more labeled. Obviously, I've got some different, it really resembles more of a map here where this might be a sketch of the world. It, of course, is extremely accurate as well, but different views here. So you guys can play around with that and decide what you think is more appealing or more intuitive to your end users. Now, the interesting thing is that we're going to be calculating the same metrics on very similar location levels for each of these. So we're really going to do a side-by-side comparison here. And the use case for each of them is the same. There isn't much variance between why you might use one over the other in terms of what data you're looking to display. The use cases here are pretty much a parallel between the two. So what can I do with this? This is a GeoChart, as I said. What can I do with this in terms of interaction on the output, right? So on this one, I can drill down to the state level. Let's go into the USA, right? And I can see that as I hover, it's going to show me a count of the orders and a sum of the revenue. These are the two metrics I've calculated here. Let's go into the USA. Breaks it down by state for me pretty clearly. This is something we're all fairly used to looking at, right? I'll go into Oregon in this case. We've got 4 orders total. Now I can see that I have 3 data points here, but I had 4 orders. So what we're actually showing here is that one of these customers, one of these data points has placed 2 orders. The cool thing about GeoChart specifically is that of the 2 metrics I provided, I can specify which determines the color of the point and which metric determines the size of the point. In this case, I'm doing, as I just showed you, number of orders as well as the sum of the revenue. And the number of orders is what's determining the color of the point, the color of the dot here, right? So this Portland, this company in Portland had 2 orders, which is why they are, and we can see on this legend here, it's pretty clearly displayed, but they're all the way in this light hand, this right-hand light color. And then, of course, the other 2 have 1 order apiece, so they're going to be over on the blue side, and a little arrow pops up on my legend to show me right where I'm at when I hover one of these points here. So that's all pretty straightforward. Now, I mentioned the size of the point is determined by the revenue. So in this case, these 2 have a very close revenue value, 285 and 313. This one's going to be close to 1,700. So again, a little bit of a difference there. But it's really neat that GeoCharts are able to really give us a display without even hovering a point. I get some information about them, a little bit of an understanding of what I'm looking at. So let's set one up. We're going to do this from scratch as if we're building this exact map up from scratch. So let's jump in and get started. Make sure you guys can really watch this video and follow start to finish. And if you are following along and creating one as I go now, then here we go. Let's dive in. Okay, so I'm going to do an advanced report, right? And if you guys have caught any of our many charting labs, the template lab, or if you've used any of these features yourselves, you know that in Exago, using these features, the process is going to be add the data to our report and then merge it onto the visualization in the proper spot. And we assigned where each data field should display in the wizard, right, when we're building up the visualization. So we're going to take that same approach here. I'm going to go ahead and give this a name. We'll just alter it slightly from the one that I already have built so that we can save it in the same folder here. And as far as categories, I'm going to be adding information per customer. So I definitely want my customers table. The only other one I need for those metrics is order details, but due to the joins, I'm going to grab orders and then order details subsequently. So pretty clear there, right? Nothing out of the ordinary here. This has nothing to do with mapping specifically. I'm simply starting an advanced report. Okay. As far as my sorts, I'm going to add one sort on company name. I want to pull all of my data from a footer so that I can get really specific there. Not going to add any filters, and I'm going to edit my layout right in the designer here. So I'll go ahead and finish. We're in our familiar designer. So a couple things before I actually add data here, and we actually did have one question come in. How is it determining the point within the state? Is it by zip code, county, other, etc.? Really good question. In GeoCharts, we're going to get down to the city level. So in the map that we saw here, When I zoomed into USA and then I think I went to Oregon, these are determined by a city, a field in my data that gives me the city that's associated with each company in this case. Now with Google Maps, I can do it I can customize it a little bit more. So I can still do it by city, I can do it by zip code, I can do it by county, latitude, longitude, like I mentioned. So the answer to the question is determined by the map type that I'm using. In this case, however, what you're looking at right now is determined by city. And feel free to let me know if that didn't answer the question completely, and we can definitely loop back around, but I'll keep going for now. Okay, so first and foremost, I don't need my details section, so I'm going to delete that completely. A couple of the next steps I'm going to be taking are just some formatting options, and a couple of them honestly are personal preferences. I prefer to work within one column if possible, so I'm going to remove these, expand this out nice and wide, and then I'll add in my group footer. Right, so I mentioned that we added that sort field in order to be able to pull information per company. So I'm going to add a group footer on that sort field company name. I'm also going to add a report footer. Now, maps can be placed in report headers or footers as well as group headers or footers. I'm going to place my map in a report footer. I want it to encompass all of the data from my report and really summarize everything. So I'm going to make my cell nice and big here. This is where my map is actually going to live once I add the data to my report. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add a couple rows here. This is where my data is going to live, right? So this will be mapped to my map. Poor choice of words there. What I'm going to do before I add any data here is actually go into my GeoChart wizard to take a look at the location options provided to me. So I can go into the wizard. I'm not actually linking any data. I'm not setting any values here. I don't have anything on my report. So if I go to the locations tab, there's actually no options for me, right? Pretty straightforward there. But I just want to get an idea of the types that I'm going to be looking for. So in this case, and this ties right back into that first question that we got, I have set for me country, region, and city. So these are predetermined location types that I'm going to use fields corresponding to. So now that I know that these are the three that I'm looking for here, I'm going to add them on to my report so that that data is available to me. Let's open up my customers table. Okay, so then I can grab, first was country. Let's add country. Then we wanted region. And then we wanted city. Awesome. Really easy there. I just need to have them on my report in the correct section so that contextually we know which data to pull. But again, really straightforward setup here. These two cells that I've left blank right now are going to be for my detail information. What am I displaying? What metrics am I actually aggregating per location? In this case, and I mentioned this at the top, but in case you missed it, no problem. What we're doing is number of orders as well as total revenue. So the first number of orders is going to be a count, whereas the revenue is going to be a sum. The neat thing about the wizard here is that I don't need to put this into my report as a formula. I don't need it to be a distinct count of the order ID. I can apply that aggregation right in the wizard. Let's go back into the GeoChart wizard. Now this type page we skipped over before, it's very straightforward. The first thing is choosing our base map. What is the largest area we will cover? We can start on the world, certainly, but we can also go a little bit finer tuned, right? So maybe I only want to show information for the US and there's no point in having the entire world map display at all. I can change that right here before I even get into it. I'm going to leave it as a world map. We do have, of course, theming. This is application-wide. Everybody's pretty familiar with themes. I'll go with sandstone in this case just to switch it up a little bit. I have an option to display or not my legend. That's this at the bottom here. You saw the gradient going from blue to tan in order to display the different number of orders. I think the legend is very helpful, so I'm going to leave it for now. This is perhaps the easiest part of, of setting up maps. All I need to do is assign the correct fields. So country, region, and city. Done and done. I can choose to show the last location type as markers or regions. Leave those as markers, all good there. Now this is the last part of the wizard here for GeoCharts, and I kind of spoke to this before, but we haven't seen this page yet, so let's take a minute and figure out what we're looking at. This text over here is telling me what the metric will determine. So in the first part, one more question. So currently we're focusing on GeoCharts only for the first half of the lab. The second half goes into Google Maps, but for anybody on a version prior to 16.3, we just want to make sure that we cover GeoCharts pretty thoroughly. And as well, anybody after 16.3 could very well prefer GeoCharts to the Google Maps. Maybe they're used to using it, so we just want to kind of do a thorough walkthrough of both here. So bear with me, we will get to Google Maps, I promise. This text here is letting me know what the metric is going to determine as far as the display of my map. So the first is the color of the locations, and the second is going to be the size of the markers. I want the order ID, and of course it's actually going to be the count of the orders, right? But I want this field to determine the color and the revenue to determine the size. We're mimicking that map that we saw at the beginning. Give it a label, so number of orders here, and this is going to be a distinct count. And then we'll call it total revenue, and that is a sum. Last two fields here is just your number display format. So in this case, I'm displaying a number of orders. Default is going to be fine. For revenue, I'll select currency, and I'll also up the decimal places to 2 so that it really displays as a monetary value and we get the exact number there. Okay. Can finish the wizard. My GeoChart displays nicely here. I'll go ahead and suppress these rows because on my output I really am only interested in seeing this chart. And we have the exact same chart that map, excuse me, that we saw at the beginning, and of course this one zoomed in, but right, same thing here. So again, very straightforward setup. If anybody has any questions, feel free to, of course, at any time, but we are concluding the GeoChart section, so if there's anything that you were expecting to see and you didn't, or anything that was unclear, let me know. And I think I will move into Google Maps while we wait here. So let's see what we got. Okay, so as I said, Google Mapping was introduced in 2016.3. Again, we're going to start by looking at the finished output to get an idea of what we're going to be creating here. Okay. So the look and feel is a little bit different right off the bat. We have a more detailed and labeled map that is fixed in a square format. Now, of course, the GeoChart was staying within a cell as well, but it was a little bit more difficult to see the outline of that square than on this version. The other difference is that the GeoChart is locked to only show, I can't zoom out more than this, essentially. It's locked to only show one world view. In the Google Maps, I can zoom out to say, maybe, what is this, 3.5 world views. So this can definitely be a little bit more dynamic, and I can expand and shrink as I'd like. The other thing you can do with Google Maps, and I do this almost every time I'm interacting with one, but I can go to full screen view. This allows me to really see pretty good detail on my report, on my map, as well as everything is just much bigger. It's much easier to see. I think the full screen feature is something to take advantage of, especially if your map is placed on a dashboard. So I can click and drag to move the map around. I can double click to zoom in one level. So I'll zoom into the United States. Right, so again, a little bit more detailed of a map, but we've got the same data displaying here. Okay, let's go into Oregon again as we did with the GeoChart. So I'll double click again. You can see those same blocks that we saw in the GeoChart, right? So exact same data being displayed here. We've got 2 orders up here, one over here with a higher revenue value, etc. Now the difference is that I can zoom in here, get even more detailed. I can see exactly where this order is coming from. And of course, the important thing to know here, that top value, and I can't put my mouse over it because the tooltip will leave, but the top value in the tooltip when I hover is actually the level that we're at, or the region level. So in this case, it was a zip code. If I continue to drop, I'll be, and this is how I know this is my lowest level, it's a pin drop, a data point, and it'll show me that exact value there. So differences here, the biggest one definitely is the number of levels and the ability to dynamically determine those levels based on my own data setup. Let's zoom out and build one. And I'm going to escape my full view. Okay, so we're going to start the same way. We're going to create an advanced report. We're going to go ahead and give it a name. So let's call it Google Maps information. Okay, so I'm gonna, so there's a couple questions coming in, but I think that they're a little bit more specific to, more specific to each user. So I'm gonna let Travis and Alex, we have two guys over here actually answering questions for us. So big thanks to both of you guys. And if there is one that you think would be good for the group that I'm missing, definitely feel free to jump in. I know Travis, you generally are.
Hi, Emma.
Yeah,
can you hear
great.
me? Yeah, so one question came in on drill downs and linked reports. So while you're showing that the maps can drill into more detailed information geographically, we don't currently support our linked report feature on maps, which would let you open up sort of more detailed views or detailed rows or other charts and things like that. So that is currently not a supported sort of cross feature policy right there.
Yeah, really good clarification there. Okay, cool. So Travis, of course, at any time, jump in again. I'm going to proceed with Google Maps for now. I think that was really the blanket statement there that was necessary. Now go ahead and grab customers again, and we'll do the same, right? Orders to order details. We really just need this order details object. Same sort, company name, and I'm going a little bit quicker here, but we've already done this setup, so I think this should be pretty straightforward. And I'm also going to do the same bit of formatting here, just to kind of make this as simplistic as possible, right? Let's get rid of stuff that we don't need. Add a report footer and a group footer. Okay, great. I'm going to need a couple more rows this time. I think that might do it, but if I need more, I'll grab more as we work. So I'm going to start by doing the same thing. I'm going to go ahead into the wizard really quickly so that we can take a look location-wise what data we might want here. As far as the metrics that we're aggregating, we're going to have the same two here as we did on the other for consistency's sake. So right away, we've got a different interface and definitely more options. A couple things to understand here. This is definitely where it gets fun, right? I think Google Maps are a lot more fun. Some of the location types here may require others to be added in order to accurately use them. They also may prevent other types from being added. If we add any that require another, we are going to get a little message that prompts us to add the missing level. It'll simply say required next to it. And when I start actually adding some, we'll see that. But I just want to get an idea of my options here. So I think we'll do country, then we'll do region. So it'll be state in the United States, provinces, or what have you in Canada per se. We'll go zip code, and then we'll do city and street address. So now I know what I'm looking for. I know what I have to put on my report. I'm going to exit the wizard and start populating, right? Again, open up my customers table. This is all I need. I'm going to grab country first. Then I said region. Now I'm going to grab postal code, city, and address. And it looks like I need one more. Okay. And now I'm just going to grab my metrics, right? So let's grab order details. We're going to do a count of the order ID as well as the sum of the revenue. Great. So again, the setup is honestly the simplest part. It's so straightforward. Once you know what you'd like to display, it won't take you long to actually display it. The difficult part is understanding what your data setup is, what it allows you to map to, and then what metrics you'd actually like to display for each of those locations. So once you have a really good idea of what you want to do, the actual setup is very simple, as you guys have seen here. I'll go into the Google Mapping wizard. We're going to start to apply our locations. So I told you before that adding some will remove the option of adding others. Perfect example, if I add country, latitude and longitude are immediately grayed out. Another thing to note is that we have attempted to really accommodate different data setups here in terms of, and a really good example again is going to be this lat long. If you guys have a separate column for latitude, separate column for longitude, you're going to be able to add them separately. Maybe you have a column that simply says lat long and has all of that data in one. That's going to be the use case for this location field here. We did the same thing with city and state. So lots of options here if your data is broken down differently than Northwind. Don't worry. So I said I want to do country, and I want to get down to the street address. So to illustrate the required fields, I'm going to add this street address. And we can see that in order to display the street address, we need the city and the state at the very least. I also want zip code, but I'll start by adding the state and the city separately because that's how they're determined in my data, and then the zip code. The other nice thing I wanted to point out here is that it actually orders the locations for me based on level. So, right, the highest level is going to be the country. Lowest is always, or at least in this case, is going to be the street address. So I'm going all the way down to that lower level here. I'll start linking them. Bear with me while I do all of these. Region and country. Great. Cool. Locations are all set. We've got 2 additional locations from what we had on the Geo chart, so already we're seeing a bit of an advantage here. Now here's another one. I'm not limited to 2 metrics in this case. I can add as many as I would like. So I'm going to stick with 2, but again, a little bit more flexibility here. I mentioned order ID and revenue, sum of the revenue, and we'll do a distinct count once again. So labels, same as last time. Primary metric is allowing me to, and it says it right here in this top little description here. Primary metric determines how the regions are actually shaded. So the same way that in the GeoCharts, we chose one metric to change the color of the region. The primary metric in this case is going to do just that. So I'll leave that as number of orders. Now, number format is something that we affected in the other one as well. This menu resembles our number format menu a little bit, or format cells menu rather, in the Advanced Report Designer. So again, a little bit of continuity here. And for that revenue value, I'm going to format it as a currency. My appearance tab is going to be similar to that first tab of the GeoChart wizard, but in this case, again, I can choose a theme. I'm going to leave it as the default. In this case, I really like the default Google Map theme. But I have an additional question down here. What levels do I want to calculate the metrics per? I do have some nice tool tips. Hovering these question marks will explain exactly what I'm determining here. But I can calculate metrics for all levels or for only some. Maybe I'd only like it for country and county, right? I don't need it actually calculated for state and zip code. I only want to look at it on these levels. So I can limit it down like that. Essentially what I just created is this exact same map that we're seeing here. I can zoom into levels as I said, right? So a double click will take me down one level, and scrolling will allow me to manually zoom without actually jumping a level there. And then I can go into Oregon again, for example, and see that same data, right? So do we have Okay, I'm gonna check the questions. That's about it for today's lab, right? I mentioned at the top it was going to be pretty straightforward. It's really a how-to. So we walked through how to set up GeoCharts, how to set up Google Maps, some of the major differences there, and really why you might want to use each. So what I'm going to do now is open this up, and I of course won't. We're not closing the lab, so continue to type questions if you need. What I'd like to point to now, just before anybody hops off, is the survey at the end of the lab has been altered. We altered this last month. We're still kind of playing around with it. So this week, the survey at the end is going to have two options for next month's end user topic only. On the technical lab in 2 weeks that Travis will be delivering, we'll be giving options for the technical lab, right? So the end user options are going to be today and then tune in 2 weeks. So Google Maps was introduced in version 2016.3. That just came in a question, and that's obviously applicable to everybody. So there you go there. And then just to be specific, those two options next week, as you guys can see on screen, interactivity on the output. So just to kind of be a little more specific there, we're going to do the whole lab from the perspective of an end user with only read access to every folder. So I'm going to be displaying interactivity on dashboards and advanced reports and things like that, but from the perspective of someone who has absolutely no access to designers. Chained reports is very straightforward, right? We're going to be talking all about how we might do chained reports, what the use cases are, what the benefits are, and how they might help you guys in your day-to-day. Last thing, tune into the next lab in 2 weeks. Title is Actionable Output, launching a custom dialog from your report. So as I said, Travis is going to be giving this one, very fun one. Anything using action events and server events are definitely really cool labs. We get into some codes, so tune in if that is interesting to you guys.